YouTubers, I want to welcome you to another edition of Park and Bin Gear. Okay, and hope you're subscribing and liking the videos and things, because I often refer to older videos. And last week, I discovered that I needed more bass at the time because of the setup I was running, right? And so I got sold a Rumble 15 Fender bass amp, and instead got a Fender Rumble 25 guitar amp in the hope that I wouldn't regret it. Well, unfortunately, guess what? As it turns out, I may be in need of the Fender Rumble 15 again. And if that's the case, I'll have to buy one. And I'll show you why here in a second. Now, last time we did the small guitar setup. And I'm thinking of a small guitar setup that is very simple. And we're talking about a quick setup. You know, nothing too fancy at all, but that will still give me a stereo sound with a bass sound and stereo and looping, right? Now listen, I'm sure I've told this story before. However, unfortunately, my setups in the past have been quite huge. In fact, I'll tell you a couple of things. One, I played a little coffee house. Made the mistake of bringing my full rack gear setup. Consisted of 2 8-space racks, a bunch of cabinets and things. I mean, the setup was huge. It was overkill. But I'd never played there before and didn't realize what I was getting into. You know, a little coffee house place with this huge setup. Listen, it was so big that they made me play outside and people would listen from the inside because I just had so much gear and things. I decided never to make that mistake again. And in fact, I played that place several times, and the second time I just brought a couple of little tiny combo amps and it was fine. Beyond that, I also played a place, I recall, and I mean, I had I think it was a pickup truck at the time, right, filled with cabinets and amplifiers, all kinds of stuff, pedal board, huge pedal board. And unfortunately, I didn't have a roadie or anything like that, so I had to do all that myself. Not only load the pickup truck and then drive over, but then have to unload it, bring the stuff in and set it up and things. And listen, honestly, by the time it came for me to actually play for about 4 hours, right? I was exhausted already, just from the setup. I hadn't even played yet, right? Learned that mistake as well. Right? Well, so this is why I'm trying to find a super simple setup. It's very basic, but gives me the pretty good sounds, right? That I can just pick it up, go somewhere and play, you know, just walk in and have all my stuff there, ready to go, you know, instead of having to make, 10 trips back and forth and this kind of things. You know, it's not good. And, this is how gear gets stolen, by the way. You know, when you're making trips back and forth and you come back and, where's my amp? Luckily, this hasn't happened to me. Okay, so in any case, I had that down. From the nuts, I was going into a power amp pedal, and really to do it right, I was using the crossover boxes, right? So I kept messing around with different things I had laying around. And I discovered, well, okay, here's a way to get rid of the power amp pedal altogether and the crossover boxes, making it even simpler setup, right? And I'll show you what this is. Let me see if I can grab one here. Okay, and these are little portable Joyo, right? What's the number? 10Es. Little portable jobby. They're about $40, $45, something like that. And little tiny guitar amps, right? In fact, they can be battery powered, right? In fact, this one is battery powered at the moment, right? So I've got two of these, you know, and to be honest with you, I thought they were quite useless at the time, and the reason is because I had one of these. Ooh. Same deal, Joyo. However, this is the bass amp version, the MA10B, right? It gives out a little bit of bass, but not very much, quite frankly. I mean, it's, you know, they call it a bass amp. However, I found that it does pretty well with a guitar, you know. So I never used the black ones, the guitar amp ones. I thought, well, kind of redundant, you know, kind of useless. However, I was wrong, as usual. These are actually pretty good, and pretty loud, too. So I went ahead and hooked them up, and let me put this back here. And what you heard there in the intro was just me playing through the knucks into the Joyos. So here's the guitar amps. That's pretty darn good considering, you know, little $40 portable guitar amps, right? Now granted, yes, they're not tube and that kind of thing, but you've got, you know, kind of this amp modeling business going on, which is okay. And so that's the guitar amp. And I figured, man, if I just added a bass amp, right, we'd be all set. Now here's the thing. Without using my crossover pedals, which is how I usually split the guitar amps and the bass amp. However, I tried something a little different. I'll show it to you here. And this was to basically get away from the crossover pedals. I wouldn't have to bring those, and basically be able to split the signal into three, right? Two for the guitar amps as we have it, and one for the bass amp. Okay, so here's my Nux MG300, and this is what I wanted to show you. I don't know if you can see that right here. It's kind of stretching all the amps and things, but it's this right here, this section. And if you look closely, what I have here, well, here, I'll unplug it. basically I've got two of these little stereo splitters, right? And one goes into the output, right? Which is a stereo output. Okay, so that's gonna, and then I'm gonna plug one guitar amp in here. Or actually, in this case, the bass amp, let's say, right? Okay, and now we need two guitar amps. So here's a second one. I'm going to plug that into the first one. Okay. And that gives us two outputs. Right? In stereo. Two outputs here for the guitar amps. Okay. And it splits them into a stereo signal. And then this plugs into the NUX unit. So let's do that. Okay. So I mean, there's a pretty primitive, old school way of doing it without the crossovers. Now, with the crossover units, it just gives you much more control. You know, as far as the volume of the bass compared to the guitar and these kinds of things. Here, you don't have that flexibility, which is okay. Now, here's the deal. I want to get a bass signal here. Okay. And since I sold my Fender Rumble 15 and I got a Rumble 25, which is a pretty big bass amp, and I have it turned down really low, and I'll show you why. Okay, here's our guitar signal. And that is plenty loud for, you know, small room, basically. Like a coffee house kind of place. Okay, so there we go. It sounds pretty good. I mean, I could certainly play a show with this setup right here. Believe it or not, it's actually quite loud. In fact, I have to be kind of careful because if you push it too hard, it's going to distort those amps, those guitar amps. But I have it set at 75. Now, here's the thing. Watch what happens when I turn up the Rumble 25 amp. Okay. So as you can tell, the Rumble 25 is almost overkill for this little setup. Now, to give you an example, I'll just play this, but it's pretty sad. Let's replace the Rumble 25 with this little guy, and this will provide the bass, in theory. However, forget, no crossover, so you're going to get guitar and bass through here. And it's not much to write home about, I'll tell you that right now. I mean, it's okay for what it is, but... Okay, so this is with the little Joyo bass. We'll play the same loop. I mean, you can hear the bass, but just barely. In fact, you hear the guitar as well. So what I'm going to do is turn off one of the black Joyos, and the white Joyo is going to play both the bass and guitar. So there we go. Let's hear that. Okay, now here's what I've done. I've got two of these little Joyos, the MA10Bs, right? Little portable jobbies. And I've got two of them in stereo, handling both the bass and guitar. Right? So, here's what you get. Okay, so real quick, I said that the Joyo MA10B is kind of useless, but it's really not that bad at all. In fact, I'll show you. I'm running a loop I made off of it, and it's fine for kind of a living room. Or man, you'd have to have an awfully small little room to use this playing live, depending on how big the room is. But listen to this, it's not bad at all. Okay, so in other words, if you really wanted a small setup where you bring just these two Joyos, and the Nux, and that's it, to handle bass and guitar and looping and everything else. It's kind of crazy, but okay, so that's our guitar sound. Okay, so we'll go ahead and loop something here. It doesn't distort. So it should be about, this is kind of the maximum level, really. Adding the bass. So basically, at our real simplest setup are the two Joyo MAB10s, output out of the Nux pedal board, and that's it. No bass amp, no nothing. So, and this is what you get. Here's a loop I did on it. So, it's not super loud. Definitely, I suppose you could use it in a small coffeehouse gig, but it'd have to be an awfully quiet room. Right? Which actually for a coffeehouse is okay, because remember they're there to drink coffee, not to hear you, really. You know, so not bad. I'm very pleased with those. And the next step up, which is to me is a huge surprise, is the Joyo guitar amps. And here we can add a bass amp too. Now here I've got the Fender Rumble 25, but it turns out I just purchased, after selling, right, my old Fender Rumble 15, I have another one on the way. So, you know, I wasn't expecting that, honestly. I thought I'd made a pretty sound decision in selling it and getting another Rumble 25. And I'm very pleased with it, don't get me wrong. But I miss the little size of the Rumble 15, especially with these little Joyo guitar amps. And I'm talking about the black guitar amps, right? The Joyo guitar amps here. And, well, let's take a listen to that. Okay, now real quick, a step up from just running into the two Joyo bass amps, the MA10Bs, right? The white ones here. Now we're going to use two of the Joyo electric guitar amps, the black ones, and use the MAB10 as the bass amp. And quite frankly, it's kind of disappointing, but anyway, here it is. Remember, we're not using a crossover or anything, so the bass amp, unfortunately, plays a lot of the guitar signal as well, and it gives it kind of an off-balance sound. So not ideal, definitely. And if I was to use this route, I would use a crossover, get rid of the guitar signal and kind of give you a bigger bass sound. Okay. But this is where the little Fender Rumble 15 should come in, right? Handling the bass duties of the that the Joyo electric guitar amps are not doing. But since I don't have it yet, and I sold the one I had, We're going to run it into the Rumble 25. Okay, so here's the two Joyo electric amps, the black ones, and the Fender Rumble 25 bass amp. Let's hear that. Okay, so the little tweaking, I think this setup number 2 if you like, will work really well. I mean, the two electric amplifiers from Joyo, right, the black ones, and then a bass amp. Right now it's the Fender Rumble 25, but you could scale that down to the Rumble 15, which is much smaller. I wish I had one to show you here and try this out. I promise when I get it, the one I just got or just purchased, when I receive it, I'll try this setup and see if that would make the difference. And if so, that would be really super, because think of it, you could go anywhere, bring the little Nux pedal board, right, the little Nux pedal, the MG300, the two little Joyo black amps, right, which would pretty much fit in a backpack, and then the little Rumble 15 bass amp. And that'd be a setup, you know, pretty loud, really. Okay, so that would be setup 2. From there, we go to setup 3, which would be 2 of the orange amps using the Thunder 99 power amp pedal, and then a bass amp, either the Fender Rumble 15 or 25. Right, and then from there, the same setup, but you'd add the crossover pedals. Right, and I'll tell you, I guess if those get really loud, those little orange amp cabinets, you'd be really surprised. From there, then you'd probably, I don't know, well, move up to probably the 5-watt tube amps, right? And then from there, probably the Fender Super Champ X2s, and then from there to the bigger amps, like the Deluxe Reverb, the Bugera V22, the Blackstar HD Club 40, and so on and so on. So definitely you have a different choices of setups. The big surprise for me were the Joyo electric guitar amps, which I was thinking of selling as well, thinking, no need for them, because I had the Joyo bass amps, right? Which are decent, considering they handle guitar and bass pretty well, not super great. But it's one less amp to carry too, compared to the Joyo electric guitar amps with the bass amp. Right? So that's it for now. These two setups, and I'm really pleased, I can say. Man, and the sounds you get out of this Nux MG300 are really great. You can really program in some standard sounds, ambient sounds, delayed sounds, and the bass emulation's okay too. Alright, so I wanted to share that with you, and man, I just knew it. I just knew that if I sold, I was reserved. It was hard for me to part with that little Fender Rumble 15 bass amp, but I'd already committed to selling it, so I sold it, and sure enough, very next day, I needed a small bass amp, right, for this kind of setup right here. And the Rumble 25 does great, but it's a big amp. So to make it smaller would be great, So we'll wait for the Fender Rumble 15 to get here, the new one, and we'll go from there. But I think that's pretty much the simplest setup. Now, I think the only simpler, smaller, I should say smaller, not even simpler, is if I could find a little stereo guitar amp with stereo inputs, right? That's all you'd have to carry, though you'd probably have to add a bass amp too, But that'd be down to 2 amps instead of 3. The only problem with that is those small little stereo amps, if I can find one with 2 inputs, that doesn't have, freaking 1-inch speaker or something, right? The problem is the stereo separation, right? Here you've got some separation between the 2 amps, whereas on a small one that you carry, you don't have that at all. Now, one possibility that does have stereo inputs is a Yamaha, little yellow portable jobby, right, amplifier, stereo amp. The problem with those, those get in the $200-300 range, right? No way. This is supposed to be inexpensive too, like the little Joyo amps. They're like $40 or something like that, and the pedal was less than $100. So very inexpensive is what I'm looking for, but still quality sound if I can find it. And here we're getting pretty darn close. I'm quite impressed with the little Joyos, for what I'm trying to do anyway. Man, when you add a bass amp to the setup, it's unbelievable, really. I could certainly play a pretty big room coffeehouse with this, Alright, anyway, that's where we're at for right now. And we'll see if I can come up with some different things, But here I've really eliminated the crossover pedals and the power amp pedal, right, for a really small setup. And to think that I can run all of it, not just the amps, but the Nux pedal too, via the Joyo battery-powered, power brick thing, right, that runs off a battery. It will power those 3 things. Now what it won't power is the bass amp, right? So you'd have to plug that in, unless you used one of these. But I have to admit the sound wasn't all that great, because I'm not using a crossover or anything. So that poor little bass amp has to handle bass and guitar signals, and it's just kind of overwhelming, the amp. If I were to use a crossover pedal, I'd have to plug that in as well. Man. So there's pros and cons to these little tiny setups, But I love the idea of just having to bring the 2 little Joyos and a bass amp and the pedal, and that's it. To go out and play somewhere without having it be a big deal where you gotta unload your minivan and bring all that stuff in and set it up, you know. Whereas here it's nice and quick and very simple and easy to move around. Alright, very good. I'll see you next time.